Hi everyone, welcome to the closing keynote of our Digital Security Week. My name is Nico Sienert. In these unprecedented times, we have to be creative to bring our solutions closer to you. That's why we have created this Security Week. I hope you liked it and you have learned a lot. I also want to shout out to our partners. They have done a great job telling customer stories during the week. And for now, we have foreseen a closing keynote with a lot of demos. And I'm not going to do that all alone. For that, I have invited my colleague, Bart Esnot. But before we do that, let's take first a step back and summarize what Microsoft Security actually is. And basically, you can summarize it with these 4 pillars. Identity and access management, you have seen earlier this week a session of SecWise, for instance. Threat protection was covered by the Collective and Synergics. Data protection was covered by KPMG and Proximus. And then we had NTT, Dexmag, and Visio that talked about our cloud infrastructure securities. Very important on this slide is also the subtitle. Our product teams, always high on their radar, is keeping the right balance between security and user productivity. That's key. If you are losing that balance, you will frustrate your users, you will lose them, they will do workarounds, and in the end, you will lose your goal, and they will be not productive anymore. And that's, of course, not what you want. So keeping that right balance is super important to make sure that your security projects are successful. And I will give an example of that just in a minute. First pillar is identity and access management. One of our basic stories in that context is zero trust. We don't trust anything. We don't trust a user, a device. We don't trust anything that tries to access your applications and your data that are on-premise or in the cloud. So what we have is a real-time evaluation technology that is checking continuously if your device is in a good state, your users are in a good state, and then we allow them to your infrastructure. That principle we call conditional access. As I said, keeping the right balance is super important. So it needs to be seamless for all your users. And that's basically also something that we can achieve thanks to conditional access. I'll give you an example, for instance, on multi-factor authentication. A password these days is just not enough anymore. We even claim that within multi-factor authentication solution, you will keep out 99% of all identity attacks. So you would expect that all customers are doing it, but we see completely the opposite. And the most important reason for that is that they are afraid of losing that balance. If you will ask to your user 10 times a day an MFA, of course, then you will frustrate him. So it's important that you find that good balance. And that's what we will do with conditional access. You will only receive an MFA token if it's really required. Let me give you an example on how we are working within Microsoft. So in the morning, I boot up my machine, and based on Windows Hello, which is actually MFA based on biometric technology, I get access to my applications and to my data. Single sign-on. Security grade, user experience grade. As from that moment, I will only be challenged on an extra MFA if a certain anomaly is detected in my behavior, for instance. An example, I would log on the machine of Bart, then our AI system does not expect me there, so at that point of time, he will ask me a multi-factor authentication. So that's an example on how we do it on a very intelligent way, so you don't have to be afraid to do multi-factor authentication. Do it for all your users, not for just your administrators, do it for everyone. With Azure Active Directory, we have the biggest identity and access management platform in the world. It's built on Active Directory that basically every company is using, and we extend that to the cloud. So that's your single pane of identity, let's say, to thousands of other SaaS applications where we federate or integrate with. Also B2B scenarios we can build, or B2C scenarios with your citizens or your customers. And then the last one, which is very important and where we see that a lot of customers are struggling with, is governance. You know for sure the scenario when a user asks rights to a certain repository, he gets these rights, and then he has the rights for life. And that's, of course, something where hackers are very interested in. So concepts like just enough access, just-in-time access, identity management, privileged access management, that is typically key in your defense strategy. And Proximus is talking about that, as you have noticed in our Security Week. So with that, Bart, please demonstrate us on how we understand what Zero Trust is in our security stack.
Thank you, Nico, for the introduction and the closing Keynote session. So indeed, what we will do right now is actually provide you with a demo of what identity trust is within Microsoft. So the scenario that we will go through is threefold. We will actually, as Veronique is working in the headquarters of Secure HR, she wants to just open up her Outlook online and wants to start working. Now, as she's within headquarters, she right now can just really easily use her username and a password, and she automatically is redirected to the page where she can start working. Now, why is this so easy for Veronique? As she's working within a zero trust model that is configured based on specific criteria. For example, the laptop where she's working on is managed, is under control, and the location where that laptop resides is in the headquarters, is in the physical network of the headquarters. So in the zero trust model, she right now can just easily send an email to her colleague Adele and ask Adele if she has some time tomorrow at 9 a.m. to sync, because Veronique has a meeting internally, a team meeting where really she wants to collaborate with her colleagues. So as you can see, username, password, really easily log on, sending an email and do the complete work that she needs to be doing. Now, while Veronique is going to home from her headquarters, she right now is at home in another type of endpoint, not in that trusted location. So as you can see, while she's in her home office, wanted to do some extra work done, she wants to just open up again her Outlook Online and log on. So she's just doing exactly the same thing as when in headquarters. She's open up, logging in, but as that zero trust model right now is not being confirming that it is her identity, she needs to right now provide the second factor. She needs to provide a code that Veronique proves it's Veronique. Now, as you can see, just that simple code, and there are a lot of different ways that you can, of course, use a multi-factor authentication capability within Microsoft. He can just right now easily open up her email and start working again, sending an email to her colleague to ask her to really join that meeting tomorrow. Now, in the backend, what happened? That zero trust model, that technology, which we call conditional access, is constantly evaluating all the specific criteria that are being sent and being corrected by the IT management. In this session, she, of course, is using her managed endpoint, her trusted location, but we have specific more criteria that are working to provide a zero trust model implementation. We can, of course, together with the connection of Defender for endpoint, the endpoint security tooling, define if that endpoint is under attack or not. Based on specific other criteria, like an unmanaged or a managed compliant or an uncompliant device, we can start triggering. Now, with all actions, of course, the identity attacks are on the rise. So let's assume for now her identity and her password are being leaked into the dark web. So a malicious cyber attacker wants to misuse her credentials to start an attack. Now, for this specific demo, we are using a specific browser, because that browser can simulate a couple of different scenarios where we automatically can detect and take responses where needed. So, as the attacker is using Veronique's credentials to start his cyber attack on that environment, our AI-based intelligence is immediately automatically detecting that something malicious is going on and can take the appropriate actions thanks to the integration into the zero trust model. Now, as you can see, the attacker is not getting in based on our zero trust model and the automatic enforcements of protection. That is something that helps us within conditional access and the implementation of zero trust. Now, this is actually step one. Let's take it next step further. Let's use the integration of not only identity, endpoint, locations, but also use the integration of information security. Within enterprises, within companies, information security is more important than before because the use of cloud technology. Now, what we can see in here is that in this specific use case, Veronique is traveling and she's at a customer site without the capability of using her endpoint, and she really needs to open up specific documents because she has the use of them in that specific meeting. She needs to be quick. So she gets an endpoint of one of her clients, and she really quickly can connect to her OneDrive of Secure HR. Now, as she's logging on, of course, our zero trust model is always active and helps us to automatically not only provide that with that username and the password, but of course asking for that second factor within that technology. So as you can see, she needs to provide her code. Now from the moment she has entered her code, her second factor, the technology in the backend starts evaluating all the specific criteria. And not only does she get access, not only can she start working from everywhere, but we also can take extra security measures than just allow or block. We can start governing her active session to, in this case, OneDrive. So we can mention to Vernick, dear Vernick, you can work no matter what, no problem, we allow you, but based on the company policies, you will not be able to download any specific type of files that are being classified as highly confidential onto your laptop or the device that is unmanaged because of company policies. So with this example, we do not only use the zero trust model, we integrate information security to leverage the security that is needed across devices, across identities, and across information. Over to you, Nico.
The second pillar is threat protection. This is about our advanced threat protection solutions that we have. It's a story about automation, big data, and artificial intelligence, giving you automated response and even prediction on threats that are modern and coming as from tomorrow, let's say. We have different ATP solutions across our stack, like Office 365, endpoints, identity, but also in the cloud on infrastructure, on databases, Kubernetes, storage, and so on. Let me give you some examples on what we mean with that. So with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, for instance, we have an extra protection on top of your antivirus. An antivirus is still playing his role, but it's just not enough anymore. The reason why is an antivirus can only protect you against threats that he knows. So he's always running behind the facts, let's say. So that's why you need an ATP solution that typically can even recognize certain patterns or can even predict certain behavior. And that's what we mean with a threat protection solution. So it's a combination of an antivirus and an ATP solution. We have the same on identity, for instance. Studies are explaining us that a hacker is typically 200 days within your environment before you discover it. So they are very low profile in your environment, trying to learn a lot from your environment, and then they will make that lateral movement to your crown jewels, and then they will attack. That lateral movement, there we have sensors to bring these signals to you. So you know once they start to attack a database, your data, administrator passwords, whatever, that you will know it. So it will be very important that you tackle them up front before they attack, of course. That's what we'll do, for instance, with Microsoft Defender for Identity, formerly known as Azure ATP. So Bart, can you explain us, based on the attack chain, what we offer in terms of threat protection?
Thank you, Nico. So let's actually start with a short explanation of a typical cyber attack that happens today. So let's go over one example, as there are enough examples these days to cover. So for example, a specific type of attack, the Holmium attack. What actually cyber attackers do these days is that they do not only just focus on attacking the endpoint or a cloud or a network, they actually combine all these vectors in some kind of an attack. They want to create chaos. They want to use the integration between, in this case, for example, starting an identity-based attack via a password spray. They want to detect if users are not using multi-factor authentication, like mentioned before. From the moment they don't have an MFA enabled and they get the passwords and the identities, they really quickly can move from the identity into the cloud apps, in this case, for example, Office 365. Now, from the moment they have the identity and they got a foothold of Office 365, for example, Outlook Online, they can actually move further and take the attack into the next level. They can hop up into the endpoints. So actually, in a matter of days, starting from a reconnaissance phase, they can move to the endpoints and get the information they want, but also cripple enterprises. Now, this is actually where Microsoft security comes into play. Now, looking, for example, at that demo, I really want to demonstrate to you what we within Microsoft do to start protecting enterprises across all the different technologies. Now, What we see in here, for example, is the Microsoft Threat Protection Platform, or right now called Microsoft 365 Defender. So that solution actually allows us to integrate all security solutions of Microsoft and shows us the overall view, not only on security, but also on management and compliance of the devices that are connected and managed. We can see all devices that are compliant or non-compliant. We can see all the features of security that are actually enabled or not enabled and provide you with a weighting of that scoring. We can view identities at risk. We can view endpoints at risk and specific types of attacks. Now, next, of course, to the overall correlation and integration of these security solutions, we can also automatically build incidents. And these incidents allow us to not only provide a view across the solutions, but also to correlate and prioritize across all these detection sources, like the endpoint, like the identity, and actually build a meta AI dashboard across the integrated solutions that also use their AI, where we can immediately, in one pane of glass, view all the detection sources, all the specific device groups, when that incident is being built, when what has been added or being moved into a specific type of attack. So looking at one incident, for example, is that we not only, of course, correlate, we also map the incidents into a specific industry framework, which is called a MITRE ATT&CK framework. That holds all tactics, techniques and procedures for us to have an insider view of the attack and what stage the attack is in. So we can view across the different stages of the MITRE ATT&CK framework what alerts are correlated and mapped into that tactic. So not only, of course, do we see this, we also see, of course, all the alerts in a specific timeline across the detection sources, so we really quickly can start identifying the way that the attack has been happening. We can view the entire scope of impacted devices, users and mailboxes, but also more importantly, we can see if there is any specific sensitive data that is being added or that is being installed or active on the endpoints, on the machines that are in this incident. So we can view all we need to view on a high level based on an industry framework, and we can of course map it to alerts, right? Every security responder, every security team needs to start analyzing, needs to start focusing on the specific alerts and then go into the more response phase. So we can see all alerts across detection and service sources. We can view, of course, the devices that are under impact and their risk scoring. What's the worst device that we want to tackle right now? We can view all the users that are being added into this incident. We can also view the specific investigation priority score that is automatically being correlated and mapped against the other identities, the other users of the company, so you as a security responder know when to triage what first. Mailboxes that are impacted, we can immediately take the necessary actions, but the solutions not only covers this, it also provides you with the automated investigations and response that is being triggered by the solutions. So these solutions not only work in the protect phase, they also work in the detect and the response phase. So they automatically, based on criteria, can show you and can take automatic actions next to the default protection actions. So, for example, when we look at a specific investigation that is automatically being triggered by the solution, we can view that based on specific criteria, for example, the Microsoft Defender has detected and protected against something, but the criteria has been deemed that there needed to be an automated investigation to analyze more deeply into that incident. So automatically we start analyzing all specific entities that we can see in here. Hey, the files, the processes, the IP addresses, the persistent methods. And if anything extra has been detected based on this automation, it can then automatically, semi-automatically, or manually be removed. Now, of course, all this information is also viewable in an evidence layer. So we have a complete evidence summary across the emails, across the files, the processes, and IP addresses, for us to have a complete view on everything that has been detected and being added into this incident. For example, if you look at these files in here, we can see all remediated, malicious, and suspicious files that are being added into this incident. Why is this so necessary and so important? Is that as a security responder, as a security team, we need to be able to go more into depth when needed. Of course, only when needed. You do not want to spend your entire days across all the different files and aspects of an event. You want to focusly go. So we can go really quickly into one file, for example. We can view all the details of the file. We can view the digital signature, when was it created, what laptop has it being added into this incident. We can even map it to VirusTotal if you want, and view across all security vendors what they know about this file. Now, of course, next to specific rulings and policies that we can build, we can also go hunt. Now, the hunting phase is actually time consuming. It actually takes some time to build out specific queries to go and hunt for files, for example. So from the moment you click on this button, Go Hunt, we will build a query for you. This query is then being built automatically, and you can go into the details of all the specific attributes of this file. You can, if you want, go and view if there's a specific device idea, what type of attributes that this file has, what specific users have been added into this file, and if you want, of course, next to this dashboard, you can also export this file into a CSV format for you to manually go and do other investigation actions. Now, of course, you can expand this query that we have pre-built based on the complete schema that we also offer. And on GitHub and in the environment itself, we of course have queries laying around for you to work on. Now, as with every security technology, we need to have a reporting session. And of course, this reporting section that we have also provides us with one pane of glass to view all things related to security of Microsoft in a more deep and overview manner. So that's a little bit of the idea of the Microsoft integrated security that we offer for you in one dashboard with that automation that is built as an integrated manner. So, Nico, over to you.
Thank you, Bart. Third pillar is all about information protection. Every company is confronted with a data explosion. Data is growing enormously. So how do you control that? How do you govern that? We offer a lot of technologies to help you with that. For instance, do you know what your sensitive data is? Where your sensitive data is located? Who is accessing your sensitive data? Can you label and classify your data, either manual or automatically? Can you leverage data loss prevention technologies to control the boundaries where your data is living in? For instance, can you control that someone will not share a highly confidential document with an external email address, or will not share it on a SaaS software which is not supported by your company? All that kind of concepts we will support you within information protection. And not all risk is coming from outside. We have also the concept of insider risk management. And that's typically risk that is coming from your users. Users can make mistakes, either on purpose or not. They will do malicious sharing. They can do oversharing. They will look into file shares where they actually don't have rights to. Suddenly a user is emptying his OneDrive. These are things that you want to know. These measurements of insider risk management can protect you against IP theft and IP fraud. So Bart, can you explain us a bit on how insider risk management looks like?
So thank you, Nico, for that insight on information protection, insider risk management, and unified labeling. So let's go ahead and actually see what it looks like in real life. So in this use case, in this demo, it's, for example, assume that Veronique is working for a research department, and she's actually wanted to build out the document. And that document is actually pretty confidential too. So as within the technology, she has a capability of manually selecting and classifying that file based on the criteria that she wants, so manually classification, and that classification can hold visible and invisible watermarkers and headers and footers. It of course can hold also intrinsic and invisible protection. Now, based on these manual actions, we can of course next to it also build automatic action on classification. We can automatically detect when a specific file is needed to be classified in a specific manner. So what she's doing right now is she's typing a specific file that holds confidential information which automatically needs to be classified. So she's actually uploading her file into OneDrive and she wants it to be saved in Research Doc 1. Now, the technology automatically detects that this file is indeed highly confidential and puts the necessary classification and protection on this file. So, as you can see right now, everything is okay. Now, let's take this demo one step further, because as cloud and OneDrive in this case is of course needed, Veronique also wants to hold this file into her desktop. For one of specific reason, she wants to also copy the file next to the OneDrive immediately on her desktop. Now, as a company policy does allow for this, it allows for information to be held on a device, that's no problem. But from the moment Veronique wants to also safeguard that file into an external flash drive, now that's a problem. Based on company policy, she is not allowed to secure information that is sensitive on external media because of data leakage challenges. So this is already one integrated example of how we work. We can automatically set classification based on specific criteria, and we can also safeguard it so data leakages are prevented in real time. So that always helps us from one use case. Now, one of the most important use cases on data leakage today is accidental data leakage. Now, let's take another example. Let's say Veronique has that document built, and she actually wants that document to be sent out quickly to her colleagues because everyone is under stress and need to work quickly on that document. So she opens up an email and wants to send out that document to her two colleagues, Adele and Bart. Now, as you can see, the Outlook caching automatically kicked in, and she accidentally not sent it to Bart internally, but to Bart in his Gmail address. Now, without her knowing, she's actually exposing her file into an outsider risk. So, from the beginning, that an external email address is being added, we can see immediately there's a tooltip. Outlook even mentions immediately, dear Veronique, you are also sending this email to an outside. Now, as she's under stress, she has no idea what she's doing for now, so she opens up, she drafts her email, and she wants to upload that document. So she just goes to a device, goes to that document, and wants to upload it. Now, what you can see immediately is that second question, that second remark comes, are you really sure you want to work content in here? So yeah, I really want to do this. So she sends out the email. She already had two tips. Now what you see right now is that automatically our data loss prevention not only works on the endpoint within the same technology, it also integrates the email traffic too. Now, why is this so important? For the end user, it is a transparent way of working and integrating information security, but for the IT admins, it is also an easy way because the solutions integrate together. Only one place to set your classification, only one place to set your policies. Now, let's have a look into this. So let's go into the Microsoft 365 compliance dashboard and view all things related to information protection, compliance, and governance. Now, what we can see is indeed a complete overview, like with the security dashboard, across all the alerts. We can even see a DLP rule match right now that was being triggered. So immediately we see the alerts. So we can react quickly and efficiently on what is needed. We can see if there are specific files that are being shared publicly or internally, so we have an idea immediately what's happening into our environment. Now, let's take it one step further. Let's go to the data classification section. And within the data classification section, let's actually have a look and view all the specific sensitive informational types that are available in the environment, either out of the box or customizable. We can view all the specific sensitivity labels that are being added and what their actionability was in this. Where are they stored? How much are they applied to something specific? So we can view all details, including the activities. The activities are essential for an IT admin to start looking at what is happening. Now, from the high-level overview, we go into depth. So we have, of course, our Activity Explorer. And our Activity Explorer automatically generates and correlates all the information based on information protection and compliance solutions and gathers them in here with regards to the activity. So we can view even not only when there's a DLP policy or something specific that was being activated, we can also even view, if you want, when there's a specific file created with all the attributes of this file. What's the hash? When was it used? What's the name? Who has done something? So we have an overview from a high-level point up to a low-level point to take the necessary actions when needed. Now, this is of course one overview of data loss prevention and information protection lifecycle, focused primarily on the accidental loss. But as Nico mentioned, there's also a specific insider risk. And that insider risk actually is a technology that automatically starts correlating and using that intelligence to build out cases for you. Now, in this use case, for example, we have built out a specific policy that will automatically integrate all solutions that we need to be integrated, to be added into the AI engine for insider risk. And then let's focus on a case from a while ago. As Veronique was going to leave the company, she was actually working on specific sensitive documentation and information. So as her manager was pretty concerned of when Veronique left, she would take a lot of information that was sensitive next to her, to the new employer, he wanted actually to view and review what she has done. So within Inside Risk Management, specific type of alerts are then automatically popped up, and we can view the user's risk scoring. We can also view what specific alerts across the different service sources were being triggered and added into the solution. So we can view all the user activity across the timeline. We can see what has she done with specific information that was sensitive across the different services. Has she moved information to a USB disk? Has she downloaded files from a SharePoint site? Has she moved something specific to a personal cloud storage box, for example? So we can view all these things in one pane of glass, but in a visual manner, we of course have the user activity module. And that user activity module allows us to go actually more visible and to connect the dots really quickly. You do not want to spend days and days correlating to all types of informational data sources and then manually start correlating what's going on. This is what it does. It shows us an overview of emails that were sent externally, specific data collection, physical access, removable storage integration. So we can view across the timelines what actions have been taken together with the events. So as an information protection manager, I can right now review the case and I can escalate the case to HR, to legal for next steps. This is actually where our solution comes in. This is the important stuff of information protection, compliance, and governance focused on insider risk, data loss prevention, and unified labeling. So, Nico, back to you.
Thanks, Bart. That was very useful. The last pillar is about cloud and infrastructure security. With Cloud App Security, we have a CASB solution. A CASB solution is typically a platform that protects you against shadow IT. Every company is confronted with shadow IT, so we have a database of 1,000 applications where we control what your shadow IT is, what data is traveling to that shadow IT, what threats are on these applications, and so on. So this is basically the concept of a CASB. But it doesn't stop there, of course. A lot of companies are lifting and shifting their infrastructure to the cloud. So also there we offer a lot of security. I mentioned already that we have a bunch of threat protection solutions on storage, on databases, but also on virtual machines. We can do vulnerability scans on VMwares. We can protect your Linux machines and stuff like that. This is what we call cloud security posture management. And it does not stop only in Azure. We have also connectors to third-party clouds like AWS, for instance. Internet of Things, or IoT, is also something where hackers are very interested in. These devices are all over the place and very, very badly protected. Also here has Microsoft a clear view and a clear solution already with IoT Sphere and IoT Edge. But here, for instance, we have done recently a strategic acquisition of CyberX that we are now in the middle to integrate it in our platform. So this will call Microsoft Defender for IoT, and we will expect it to be completely integrated by the end of December. And then lastly is DevSecOps. We want to give an infrastructure to our developers to develop applications on a very secure and a fast way. So we will protect your applications on every layer, on identity, on runtime, the application itself, on encryption level, and so on. And that, of course, with a close collaboration with GitHub. And then, of course, very important in this story, the 4 pillars, but how bring you all these signals together? How will you see the positives and the false positives and make your good decisions? That's where a SIEM comes into the game. Microsoft has the first cloud-built, bottom-up, as-a-service built SIEM. This is what we call our Sentinel solution. As you can see here, you can infuse Microsoft 365 Defender solutions, Azure Defender solutions directly in your SIEM. All alerts and all signals. And then, of course, we have also our ISV partners, our security partners, where you have direct connectors to other security partners, and that's also something that Bart will show in a minute in the demo. And then, on the other side, we have APIs to other cloud providers like Google and AWS, so also they can infuse their signals in your SIEM. As you also can see on the slide, we talk about SOAR. SOAR stands for Automatic Remediation, which means that we have playbooks that can automatically play and remediate if certain threats are discovered within your environment. So Bart, can you show us a bit on how Sentinel works?
Thank you, Nico, for guiding us into the world outside of Microsoft, into the integration of Microsoft solutions from the modern workplace into the Azure, into the third party, because that's where an enterprise comes from. It is never alone Microsoft. It's not just one solution. It's not just one vendor. So actually, let's look really quickly, high level, what our solution, our Microsoft Azure Sentinel, SIEM, and Source solution is capable of. So let's actually view what Azure Sentinel, our SIEM and Source solution, can do. So as you can see in here in this overview, we of course can view all the specific alerts and events that are happening across all the various solutions that we have integrated. So we can view high level what is being done. What's actually more important across this high level overview is how that data gets in. Azure Sentinel, as it is a cloud native environment, it allows us with 60 pre-built connectors to connect cloud to cloud. As it is a cloud solution, we have pre-built a lot of connectors, not just to the Microsoft security solutions, but also to third party, like for example, AWS. We can map it into all different solutions that are integrated in the cloud, and we can actually connect to your on-premises solutions too. And that's one of the advantages. Azure Sentinel is actually a cloud-native solution, auto-scalable, and capable of connecting Microsoft, third-party, cloud, and on-premises solutions to provide you with that overview. So let's go back to this central dashboard and let's go back into that overview and, for example, click on a geographical malicious event that is being triggered. So from the moment we click on that event, that query, that investigation query, is being pre-built for us. In other words, we can really quickly go into next phases if necessary. So we can right now view all specific events on that geographical location with all their attributes. In this case, for example, a command and control site that was being triggered. Now, of course, next to that environment, next to that overview and that log collection, we have the capability of moving into an analytics phase. We can build out specific type of queries, specific type of analytics rules that allow us to build incidents. Remember the Microsoft security tooling? This is actually on that level the same. We can build our custom rulings, so Azure Sentinel automatically starts creating incidents. For example, this suspicious inbox forwarding incident where we can go and investigate. We can really quickly go into that incident on a graphical mode. That incident pops up and shows us all the related alerts, the most prevalent accounts and more. So we can quickly click and we can move further into that environment for additional investigation. In this case, for example, Microsoft Exchange Online has seen 13 related alerts. Now, as we click on these 13 related alerts, a lot of extra stuff pops up and we can actually move on with our investigation into Azure Sentinel. We can view that Megan Bowen is being triggered. We can view specific activity and impossible travel. We can view other specific suspicious type of incidents and alerts that are being triggered and added automatically into an incident. And from the moment we click on a specific type of alert, we can go again into the hunting phase and detect, for example, that suspicious inbox rule was creation from the Tor browser. Yeah, it was specific impossible travel activity. So in other words, we can build our own intelligence to provide that SIEM, to provide that automation and to provide that single pane of glass. Now, as I mentioned, Azure Sentinel is also a source solution. It's capable of automation and response. So we have the capability of building playbooks in the solution. And these playbooks allow us, thanks to the integration of logic apps, to either even visible, kind of a Visio thing, start building automation in there. So for example, we can see in here is that we want to build out a playbook to block an IP address on a Palo Alto block a user in Azure Active Directory, and contact ServiceNow for an incident creation. So these are the things that we are actually capable of doing with Azure Sentinel, with our SIEM and SOAR solution. As I mentioned, Microsoft and third party. An integration of these different solutions also work within our SOAR functionality. This allows us to provide us not only with a central view across all security solutions of our company, but also provide us with less work, with less effort, and a more quickly response of the security teams. Now, of course, next to all these features, we have a lot of more different capabilities. We can go into the entity behavior. We can import third-party threat intelligence feed to enrich all the events and incidents that we are seeing. In other words, an enterprise-grade cloud solution from Microsoft, but not only from Microsoft. So, hoping that provided a short answer on what we can do on that part. So, back to you, Nico.
So, thank you, Bart. With that, I want to leave you with some takeaways. Enable multi-factor authentication. There is no reason anymore to doubt about that. You can do it now on a very intelligent way, so do it for all your users. Think about a zero trust and an assume breach approach. As I have mentioned, it takes average 200 days before you detect a hacker, so really that assume breach should be in your mindset. Thirdly, reduce complexity and think about an integrated platform. Microsoft is clearly growing for an end-to-end platform approach. The reason why is because then we reduce complexity at max. Complexity is enemy number one when it comes to cybersecurity. So that's why Microsoft is clearly going for a best of suite approach instead of a best of breed approach. Fourthly, it's an open platform. A complete ecosystem of partners, 80 today, so 80, are surrounded our Microsoft security stack. So they seamlessly integrate with our Microsoft stack. So if you want to keep a multi-vendor strategy, you can perfectly do that, but Microsoft will be an important cornerstone in your security defense. And lastly, this week you have heard a lot of partners. If you don't have the knowledge in-house yourself, don't hesitate to reach out to them. They have the knowledge and can bring you up to speed quite quickly. So with that, I want to thank you. If you are watching this live, I hope to hear and see you in the live Q&A. If not, I hope you enjoyed the Security Week and hope to see you next time in real life. Thank you.